It being 7 o'clock, I'm going to start the meeting, the June 3rd meeting of the Simsbury Zoning Commission. And the first order of business is attendance, and I see Jackie Pagos is the only member of the commission that is not here. So in that she's an alternate, we don't need to worry about
She did inform me that
substitution.
she was tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, she's not, yeah. Then, moving right along here, the next order of business is a review of the minutes of the meeting when we were last together on Monday, May 20th. So I ask if the members had an opportunity to look at the minutes and want to make any comments or corrections for the record.
I did have a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. Line 127, I believe we should say parking instead of parked. And 136, I suggest we say assured instead of insured.
Assured ASS?
Yes, I think that would be the correct verb there. Yes.
I had one other, which is, line 114, 3/4 of the way down, the references to Talcott Mountain Collective, and the word mounting is in there instead of mountain. So it's
Mountain instead of mountain.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
mountain,
yes, sir.
Yeah, minor thing, but. Did anybody else have any comments? Could we have a motion to approve with the corrections that have been identified?
So moved. Oh,
Diane, did you make the motion?
Shannon did actually.
Oh, Shannon.
But I will second
You were
it.
the second, okay. Okay. Any other comments on the minutes? Then all in favor of adopting the minutes as they were submitted with those corrections, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The minutes are approved unanimously. So, here we go. Our next order of business, moving right along here, is the, under the heading of new business, application 24-15 has to do with a site plan amendment having to do with property at 619 Hot Meadow Street, which is really across from Ensign Bickford's driveway into their primary parking lot. George,
Mr. Chair, yeah, let me
you wanna
just,
say
I'll
a few
just frame
words?
it for you.
Okay.
And Tim Kuhn of J. Russo Associates and his team are here as the applicant. But let me just clarify a couple things. So it's a site plan amendment. I think the staff report said it was a site plan amendment for 1,700 square feet. It's not. The ultimate build out would be 1,700 square feet, as the proposed addition is about 603 plus or minus with kind of a second story. But we just wanted to be clear, and that would make the total proposed building about 1,700. The existing building is about 1,100 square feet today. 619 is the property. It shares property with 625. If you're on Hot Meadow Street, it's the existing dentist office, and then I think this right now has a law office in it, if I remember correctly, the existing. So the applicant wants to expand the dental practice into this second building that's on site. So you can kind of see, you see this is the existing building, and this is the shared building on the, which is actually a little bit of a larger building on the corner of Woodland and Hot Meadow. The applicant has provided elevations. They've been to the design review board already and have a recommendation of approval from the design review board, right, at the last meeting. I'm going to let Mr. Kuhn kind of take you through, and his team take you through what they're doing. And it's all an approach to allow the expansion of the dental practice.
Good evening.
Surgical dental practice, excuse me.
No? Okay. You're good? All right. Good evening. I'm Timothy Kuhn, professional engineer with J.R. Russo and Associates out of East Windsor. I'm here tonight with Jesse Sorrentino, the applicant, and Lori DiBattista, the architect. As mentioned, the site is at 619 Hot Meadow Street, and the building that we are looking at is 619 Hot Meadow Street, which is located on the same parcel as the building identified as 725 Hot Meadow Street. There is actually a second parcel located on the left on this exhibit, which is to the south, and that is a vacant parcel. It's a separate parcel at the moment, which totals 6,558 square feet, and as part of this application, we will be merging that parcel, which is under the same ownership, with the existing parcel with the two buildings. So that's part of this as well. So we are looking to put an addition and renovate that existing building. We're going to be demolishing portions of the building and expanding and remodeling to accommodate the relocation of the dental facility. I do want to clarify what George mentioned about the square footage. Actually, I believe those square footages you listed may have been the footprints.
I think that's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Footprint.
So the gross square footage of the existing building is 18,028 square feet.
1,800.
Yes, 1,800. It's a bigger building than what's 1,828 square feet, and which includes the first story, full footprint, and a reduced second story. And then the proposed building, after we do our renovations and additions, we would be taking off the roof, actually putting a full second story on, and that will have 3,246 square feet gross floor area when we're all done.
3,200. 3,200.
Yeah, did I say 1,000 again?
No, I just want to make
So
sure
we
that's
went
right.
from existing footprint to the whole.
Yeah.
Square, yeah, on gross square footage, 3,246.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
The property card in this case was a little inaccurate in order to do an old house like this and organize it.
So the proposed renovations are kind of shown in red there. The portion of the building that's kind of staying is the white area, and the dark shaded areas would be our additions and renovated areas. We will be adding to the left side of the building, if you will, the south side, a stairwell for the second floor egress. On the right-hand side of the building, between the main entrance and the parking lot, we'll also be adding a new entrance and ramp, an ADA accessible ramp to make the entrance comply with ADA requirements. And we'll be continuing to maintain the access from Woodland Street, which is at the top of the page. There's currently parking up along Woodland Street, as well as kind of an elevated and stairs and access way to the second story door. So we will be reconstructing that in order to maintain that access to the second story door, as well as the stairs that kind of wrap around that northeast or northwest corner of the building and come down to the front door, if you look at that there. This will require some reconfigurations of the retaining walls. The ones that we're going to be modifying are shown in red there as well. And we are also adding 2 parking spaces up along Woodland Street. They would be the 2 spaces that are to the left of that walkway that comes into the second floor entrance. And that is so that we comply with the parking requirement based on our increase in square footage, gross square footage of the building. We are also replacing that front porch. There's currently a porch that runs across the existing face of the building on Hot Meadow Street. As you can see, we're going to be extending the building further south, so we're going to take down the porch and put up a new porch so that it covers the entire width of our new renovated building and the addition. We will be collecting the roof runoff from a portion of the roof and putting it into some subsurface galleries to kind of deal with the runoff from the new addition portion of this as well. And other than that, it's really just, it's landscaping. We'll be landscaping around the porch, putting some landscaping along between the parking lot and the ramp, and replacing a couple of trees. As George mentioned, we did receive design review approval and a positive referral on May 20th. We've also, were very few comments. I believe there were just some recent comments from engineering, which are pretty standard and minor, so we have no issues with those being treated as conditions of approval. As I mentioned, Lori is here. If you do have any questions regarding architecture or the changes to the building, she'd be happy to answer them for you. Or if you have any questions about the operations of the building, Jesse could probably answer those as well. So, happy to answer any questions that you have.
Just, so I'm 100% clear on this, both these buildings are gonna be dental practice? Or the one is still gonna be a combination of dental?
Yes.
Or is there a dental practice in the building with the law?
The building at 625 currently is, there are, what's it, two EPS?
Two offices.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And there was, Dr. McKenna's office was in this building. So it's always been a dental office.
Right.
So then 625 is going to remain also dental? So they're
Yes.
just both?
Yes.
Can you explain to me just the purpose of merging the two lots? Like, what was your thinking in with regard to that?
The main reason for doing that is if we leave that lot line there,
Yeah.
then we're encroaching into the side yard setback with
Yeah.
our addition. So we want to
Okay.
eliminate that side yard setback.
Okay. Okay. Is
It
there-
also reduces the
Non-conformity?
impervious coverage
Oh,
by adding more area to the
Okay.
lot.
How old are these buildings?
The original,
Oh, he-
619, I think originally was built in the late 1700s, early 1800s. Based on what we see so far, the building is a post and beam style structure, and that's primitive of that period.
With the
At
renovations?
at 619, there was an addition on the
The rear,
west side,
west side.
Yes.
okay, which is where the retaining wall is, and that was 50 years ago or so. So there's no, that was an add-on.
That was an add-on.
So would the proposed revisions change the historic nature of the older building?
No, if you go back to our, George, would you be so kind to go to our drawings, please? Yeah, no, fine, you got them. Our original intent, our intent is to keep it more of a farm style look, kind of be very complementary to the building that's next door. But our original intent is to keep it as close as we can to the area buildings that it's nearby to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you.
But it definitely looks like a totally different building.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's larger too, it's almost double in size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the change too, from the horizontal to the vertical siding catches your eye too. But it's both buildings would still be, similar in that respect.
And it's also gonna be all white, the windows will be black, the outside will be all white, everything will be white, other than the doors and the windows. Otherwise, that horizontal is not, you can see it, but it doesn't stick in your face. So it's a very subtle look on the building. Right now, it's being accentuated because it's highlighted in a black line.
What is the siding?
It's gonna be AZAC. It basically is called board and batten, so you'll see a very thin line.
Are there any signs that we have to consider, signage? Are we just keeping the same signs, or?
At the moment, there's no new sign is being proposed. If we do bring in a sign, then we come back.
Do that
for-
separate? Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
And I just, again, just to be 100% clear, there's no elevators in these buildings. So
No.
You get from one level to the other by taking the stairs.
Basically, how the practice is going to be run is, the first level is all handicap, that's why the ramp is there as well. And then folks that are gonna go upstairs, get the level from the back parking lot, they will be able to get in as well too. But based on the square footage, I don't need the elevator, so we made sure that it was accessible on both levels.
The idea was 2 first floors. So currently I'm on a 2nd floor out with surgeon. This is a much more, access to care kind of stuff.
Right, because I went into the leave, they can go out,
Okay.
they can just park above.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Are there any other?
Tim, can I just
Questions?
ask one question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think maybe I confused everybody. I think the staff report is probably accurate then by saying it's a 1,700 square foot addition to the existing.
Yeah,
Basically.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
Right.
Plus or minus.
yeah, plus or minus.
Okay,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
I think that'll work.
Because it's 2 stories.
Yeah. So I would rely on the draft motion that's in the staff report. You have it.
Okay.
I know, but I can't access it because
Okay.
it's
All right, well then I'll-
an email thing. You know how you're supposed to have an email address? Like,
So I don't want to cut this off, but if there aren't any more questions or comments, why don't we move along with a conclusion?
Yep.
We have a draft motion that was provided by staff at the end of the staff report.
Yeah, you got it.
If somebody would like to make that motion,
Mr. Chair, I got it right here.
okay.
I think my vision's probably gonna do me some good here, so. So, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move the zoning commission approves application ZC number 24-15 of PR Properties, owner J.R. Russo and Associates LLC applicant for a site plan amendment, thank you, for a site plan application to construct a 1,724 square foot addition to the existing building associated with dental office use at 619 Hot Meadow Street, Assessors Map G11, Block 107, Lot 001, Simsbury, Connecticut 06070, Zone PO. The zoning commission finds the application has met all site plan criteria in section 11 of the Simsbury zoning regulations. The approval is subject to the following conditions. 1, project shall be developed in substantial conformance with the civil, I meant to say site plan or civil plan, set titled Building Renovation and Addition, 619 Hot Meadow Street, prepared by J.R. Russo and Associates, LLC, sheets 1 through 4, dated 5/22-24, and sheet 5 dated 5-2-24. The project shall be developed in substantial conformance with the architectural plan set titled BPS Parodontics of Simsbury, prepared by De Battisto Associates LLC, dated 5/6/24, revived 5/17/24. 3, an administrative zoning permit is required.
I will second.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I just ask Mr. Sauls if he would also add, I just brought up as a condition, number 3, engineering comments
thing.
dated 5/29 be addressed prior to issuance of building permit.
So in addition to the motion, the engineering comments dated 5/29/2024 must be addressed prior to the issuance of the building permit.
I second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve this project, and we're ready to ask if there's any further discussion, comments. Hearing none, why don't we go ahead with the vote? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. The motion is passed. And good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
further investment in Simsbury. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Just gives me a little color thing going here.
Now, to the next order of business, we want to take up this effort to get moving on prioritization of concerns and potential work for the coming period. And George is really going to orchestrate this, the next sequence. But just want to remind everyone that as you look at the material, you can see the POCD is the source of a lot of the topics. And that's a 10-year plan. So bear that in mind as we try to set priorities. We're confronted, as you know, all sort of business enterprises are, with the issue of resource allocation. And there's limited resources, and so some of these things, we're not identifying whether they're appropriate or not. It's just a matter of, moving ahead with those that we identify as more critical in the shorter term. So, George, why don't you take it from there? I don't want
Okay.
to say too much here because I know you're going to do a little bit of a
Yeah, so
brief description of each one of these things. Yeah.
Ultimately, when I'm done talking, I'm going to ask you to go over to the back tables, one by one, so that you're not influenced by anyone, with your 10 dots, 10 red dots, and those 10 red dots can be placed anywhere on those, on what amounts to about 24 suggested zoning efforts. Some are acute and small, some are rewrite the sign regulations. So think a little bit about how you want to balance that again. What I thought we would do would go through each of these, and I'll give a 1-second explanation if you have any questions about where did this come from, or why would we do this, and what does it mean. We can get into it. And then what we'll do is once you could put them all on the first one first. You could put all 10 or 10.
10.
I think there's 10. There were 12 and I had to take 2 off. You only get, and then, so again, that what we'll do is we'll take a look at where, in kind of 3 cohorts. The most are on this set, the medium, and then kind of the less prioritized by you guys. So let's do that. So these are, as the chairman said, the first set are, I started to group them by topic because housing does jump out as a category that has a number of recommended policies. That's not really the case for soil and erosion control or invasive species or lighting. There are a number that come out, so I started to group them, and then let's just do that. Let me just go through them. So as you can see, the topic, where did it come from under the blue column of source, and what the issue we're trying to address is. Again, these are my words, trying to categorize them. So the first, and these are in the order, I guess, in the POCD. So the first would be a zoning effort that would amend the zoning ordinance or the zoning regs to allow 2-family units or duplexes by special permit or by right in certain zoning districts. Today we treat anything more than a single-family house as a multifamily unit, and they are allowed only in planned area developments. They're only allowed in planned area developments. We don't have a multifamily, as you'll see. I'm going to tell you in a couple of minutes. You don't have really an old-fashioned multifamily zone to if somebody came in and wanted to do that. So that's what that is. That would allow. There are places around the country that are considering that option, particularly where they have smaller lot sizes. And again, the effort is an affordable housing and a housing diversity challenge, and that's why folks are talking about that kind of change. The second one is adopt a zoning regulation to require new residential development to set aside affordable units. You have held one work session on this topic already, so I think you have a pretty good sense of what that topic is. Revise the zoning regulations to establish zoning districts for affordable projects and multifamily developments across the spectrum. Or, and this, I think I added this, and it's not in the POCD. You could revise. You have a workforce housing overlay zoning district. It's an overlay. It is. It's really the only place in our zoning regulations, our townwide zoning regulations, that allow multifamily and mixed use and townhouses and all those different kinds of things. But it comes with a 20% affordable requirement. So some of this is a little bit of a housing toolkit. You could do the set aside as a requirement across the board, whatever number you came up with, 10 or 20 or 15 or 13 or 17%, and then you could simply draft a zoning category that would allow for these kinds of projects, which we don't really have now. Could revise the POCD. I think that the zoning commission had talked about this at one time. You can revise the ADU regulations, or accessory dwelling unit regulation, to consider permitting both attached and detached ADUs as a matter of right or without a special exception process. As you remember today, we bring a site plan to you for an attached unit. We bring a special exception with a public hearing for detached units. Again, the special exception makes it more challenging for property owners to get approvals.
But that is the only distinction, if I remember right. That is the only distinction, that process thing. What you can build is the same. I mean, the size of the ADU, the size limitations are the same.
That's correct. It's just it's the process. Yes.
And both have the opportunity to add 10% for medical
Yes.
accommodation, right? Okay.
But I mean, we just say to that, the only ones that have struggled in the years I've been here and in the recent past have been where the neighborhood has come out against an application that otherwise meets the requirements, but because of the outcry of the neighbors, and I think would be a question of considering whether an easier process might be more appropriate for our town. An easier process for detached units. I mean, you could decide no, of course. So the last housing was consider a zoning district, a new zoning district which allows smaller lots. Today, we go as low as 15,000 square feet as a traditional zoning district, and there's I don't think there's any vacant land zoned R15 in town. It's a quarter acre, straight quarter acre, but. If we continue to have this housing discussion, affordability has a lot to do with available lots. Smaller houses, starter homes, are smaller. They go on smaller lots, and so it's kind of a function of how that market works. So it's worth thinking about, I think. All right, so that's your housing stuff. More generally, the POCD recommended incorporating dark sky principles for lighting standards. And you have a letter in your correspondence from the Conservation Commission who strongly recommend the zoning commission consider lighting regulations that align with the dark sky organization. Again, I'm not saying we do all of it, but through our review process and negotiation, we do ask for full code-off features and no glare at the property line. So we do work on those features, but they are not embedded in your zoning regulation. We don't have a lighting regulation, a minimum standard. Some places do.
So just as a point on that, then, I had the impression that Marjorie was trying to say that we're required to have in our code the provisions that are in sync with the letter and the attachment, that's something that we need to do. My point isn't about dark skies, it's about this and a couple more, where I just want to be sure if we're required by law to do these things, they may need a special consideration when we decide.
I don't think you're
where to
required
put
by
our
law to
boundaries.
have a lighting standard.
Okay.
No, I think she did forward a draft. I think Dark Sky does a model ordinance or a model regulation that she would ask, and not just Marjorie, the entire commission, entire Conservation Commission has felt strongly about this for some time. So.
Well, it's distinguished then from the next one, adopting electrical vehicles.
Yeah, so this is and I'll tell you why I put that on there, but you make a good point. So the next one is adopt electrical vehicle infrastructure requirement based in the new state law. So if you remember, I think I may have explained it quickly one day. So there's a new state law that requires the provision of electric infrastructure doesn't require charging stations. But for projects over, I think, 100 parking spaces, it requires a percentage to be served, essentially the conduit has to be in place to be able to be served in the future. The reason I recommend putting it in our regulation is that when we have developers in the development community come, they rely on our regs, so we can spell out, even just in our parking section, what those requirements are, as opposed to us saying, hey, do you know the state requires this? That way it's just there, and it can be relied upon as part of their preparation of plans. And that's it. I would tell you that's an easy one,
Right.
since we already have the language. Staff has recommended the adoption of a land disturbance, an erosion and sediment control requirement based on a minimum acreage of disturbance. We don't have a land disturbance ordinance or regulation or an erosion and sediment control requirement. We are trying to address one particular issue, although I think it applies community-wide. We have recently had some significant issues with large lot residential development, where we don't have plan review, we don't have a site plan process, we don't have an erosion or stormwater review process, but we have had some occurrences of runoff, improperly balanced sites running into our storm systems, and I think we had that. We, at least for a half an acre, whatever number we would recommend, big lot, big house, we're having some impacts because we don't have erosion sediment control requirements.
Somebody there's some like lots up on the mountain.
Yes.
Or wherever, somebody who's buying those and putting their own residence on there is not having to go through
That's
any kind of process.
That's exactly what we're saying.
Well, building. They go through a permit.
They go through a
process,
permit
they're not
process,
able to
right.
check their runoff or whatever.
That's
or-
exactly right. With this, we would require as simple as an erosion and sediment control plan that would show how are you handling the water during construction coming off the site.
Is that the only time period you're planning for, is during construction?
Yeah, that's exactly when the disturbance happens, when the site is raw and not stable. Right, is everybody saying it right? Brittany and we've talked to you guys about amending the public notice requirements for consistency, or, for improvement. When we have public hearings, it's always been a little confusing to folks, saying, well, why didn't I get a letter, or why didn't I see a sign? Well, we don't require any of that. We have some old, applications that say you're supposed to send letters, but we have the only requirement we have for any public hearing, so a rezoning, a zone change, a text amendment, a special exception, or a site plan where this commission calls for a public hearing, only do notice in the Hartford Current. So we don't send letters to neighbors or within 100 feet, for instance, like we do in Conservation Commission for wetlands, for the Inland Wetlands Agency. So if this commission wanted to expand how we do public notice, we have recommendations of how to do that. Or we would ask you to consider a way to employ that. I don't know what the best answer is yet, a sign or both, or when we've talked about it a little bit. We've got a memo prepared for you, but I think it's worth. I think we should be transparent. The fact that we're having special exception applications without notifying the neighbors, it's probably something we should do. I think. So.
Right.
Zoning Commission asked to revisit food truck regulations on this this issue agenda. I'll move along. So the POCD has Meadowwood rezoning in it, and let me just make sure we're clear about this. The reason it's recommended is because Meadowwood currently today is zoned for its previously approved and then abandoned housing development. It's zoned HOD, which is not consistent with, potentially not consistent with whatever the town wants to do with that property, either in open space or in those kinds of things. So we suggested, is there an open space category, or is it okay just to have it as HOD for now? I don't know. I think we should think about it, and it kind of is paired with another recommendation we're making, is that on our zoning map, we have zoning districts that aren't in your zoning regulations anymore, but still are mapped. The AZ district, there's just a number of them. We should fix that, because it doesn't make sense that we have them mapped that way without a regulatory process. The only point on the Meadowwood is that the Board of Selectmen are the owners of the Meadowwood property, so that would require a clear conversation with them about their interests and their needs. I wouldn't recommend the zoning commission just rezoning the Meadowwood property without the input and the conversation. So I think it would start with the conversation as to what the best options might be.
Just as a point of clarity, I thought that the intended commitment related to funding and grants and stuff was all gonna make plain that the intent was to keep it open space. And so if we're committed financially or legally or whatever to this notion of open space, it's for sure that the zoning doesn't say that. It says something else. It says it's available for housing, but it's not really, is it?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is in its entirety. Certainly the great majority is intended to be in open space in perpetuity.
Right.
And,
Okay.
we could create an open space category, a public use category, something like that. Again, I haven't resolved everything in my head as to how to do it, but
So hypothetically,
No.
if someone were to come in and say, I would like to put houses on Meadowwood,
Mhm.
it is zoned for that.
It is.
So.
But the town would have to be a signatory of the application.
But yeah, the town owns it, but.
Right, so
Right.
we'd
So
be in a
that's-
little bit of a pickle.
Well, they wouldn't. They would
Not
never
really.
process an application.
Got
It
it,
wouldn't get in the door.
Like the only people who would ask to build
Yeah.
would be the town.
Yeah.
got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you can't rezone somebody else's property.
But that's a good point. I don't know that you can, the town made commitments.
Right.
Generate the
There are
funding
also
stream.
significant commitments on the property
Right.
to not
Already.
develop.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you say you just want them to mow it?
I just want to know, it's totally unusual.
Snow mow
You
May.
can't-
I know.
You
Snow
can't
mow
traverse the open
Right.
space. I just, I wanted to walk on it the other day, and
Right.
you cannot.
Right.
You can only walk on the back.
It's like a thicket,
Yeah, it is a thicket.
and it seems like it's leaning out.
It's a
harder to-
ticket.
All right, let me keep going, so I'm almost done.
I wanna think
All right,
about
so,
Ticks.
so the POCD also recommended, so we've got policies in the POCD to protect our ridge lines. If you remember, we had that discussion during the last Silverman application. So, is there a way, or can there be a way to memorialize real regulation in your zoning regulations as to distance or height or how, or, again, it's not something I have the answer to, but there could be a generated zoning regulation that gets towards that protection. And that has been in the POCD since at least 2017, and perhaps before that. Also out of the POCD, recommendation to, should we review our zoning regulations to make sure that, this is actually interesting because of this application, are our regulations for residential home adaptive reuse in our commercial corridors, how hard is it to convert a house on, say, West Street or on Hot Meadow that's probably zoned commercial now? How hard is it to do that? And are there things in the zoning regulations that can help accommodate that?
So there are carve-outs there's small carve-outs in a business zone to preserve the residential that was there before the zoning commission, the zoning laws.
Yeah, so there are some houses that are zoned commercial that may have been, renovated over time, or in 1956 the realtor moved in and now it still does that. But I think that's what it's trying to get at, is there may also still be some residential properties that are eventually going to want to be converted due to the marketplace. And how hard is it
You're
with?
saying either way, commercial to residential, or are you saying?
I think the intent of the POCD was doesn't assume that folks would want to convert back to residential.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of thinking of like last week where he sort of did a little bit of both, you know,
Right.
or last meeting. Oh, you weren't here. That's right, you weren't here.
Right.
It's not.
You were not.
Which
Yeah,
application?
Charlie Kaler wanted to.
Oh,
take-
Charlie Kaler's
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
that would
was,
be an-
Brittany worked really hard with him on making, I mean, we've got weird percentages and,
So it was challenging because of our regulations, is that what you're saying?
Right, I mean, that one, not as much because it was a single family home, and then industrial, if it was more like a industrial park, then you have to have those 60-40, it can only be 40% residential, 60% business.
Yeah.
In his case, it wasn't as challenging, being the second floor residential.
Okay. Just
So
curious.
back to Kate's point though, a little bit. So say we have I don't know, an empty office space in town that we want to convert to small affordable units, just hypothetically. Would that apply to those as well? Sort of.
I would suggest we should make it apply to those, and I don't know that we have a great tool today
Okay.
to do that.
Okay.
And is it already easy for somebody to convert their house to become a commercial property if they're on the corner? Is that already sort of easy for them to do? If there, like, there's a few out, there's not that many, but there's a few.
It's still not that easy because of parking requirements and
Okay.
parking field and then impervious surface.
always-
That's not traditionally,
That's always difficult.
it is always difficult, but I think it's even harder retro to go back and do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's also a concern on the part of the people that don't want the commercial zoning closer to their house, you know. thinking
Yeah,
that if
we
it's that one
we
now,
assume
then what's the
mostly
next
that
one? What's the next one?
We assume mostly though, Mr. Elliott, is that those properties are already zoned commercial and happen to have a residential structure on it. Yeah, I mean, I think a rezoning to do that is a whole different discussion.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree, totally. Okay, one more page of miscellaneous. POCD recommends looking at our PAD zoning district and asking whether it has worked for us. Can it work better? Again, these are the PDD comes out of the state code, which is more of a plan development, a plan development ordinance, and I think it is a little bit different than our PAD is pretty specific as to what we allow and when we allow and how we allow it. I don't know that there's a lot of flexibility in it. There's only certain overlays you can use. I think it's worth looking at to see whether a true plan development district that allows for mixes and allows for reductions of setbacks and those kinds of things can work to better incorporate a mixing of uses.
And would that be in certain areas? Like, would we be looking at where those go, or would we be looking at just changing it all together for everywhere that is allowed now?
You know, often the PDD is used as an overlay to just drop on an appropriate
Okay.
appropriate parcels. Yeah.
Appropriate site.
Yeah. Kind of all over the board here, but I guess that's the point of miscellaneous. Should the zoning regulations include a requirement to do a fiscal impact and a community impact study for a major project? So we ask for them when they come in front of you when we have a big project. You ask for it. The question is should we have just a front end requirement that says if you're doing 300 units and 100,000 square feet of non-residential, you got to submit a community impact study, which includes schools and fiscal. It's, you know, usually you negotiate it as part of it, and most sophisticated applicants are going to submit that as part of that application. But there are places that have we require traffic studies for impact for projects over X, and this would go along those lines. I think there's some value there too.
Well, we heard in some of our recent applications, people asking if the developers submitting or required to are in fact doing it because they're good people. I don't know. But the physical impact study, there doesn't seem to be necessarily a clear requirement on the part of the town that the town produce a fiscal impact study that could be weighed against it. So if you had common criteria, you could see one opinion versus the other. I'm not suggesting that we haven't been in the right place, but it leaves that question. We don't have necessarily the same data to I was gonna say refute, but it's really to compare with what how do we know what the applicant is submitting is valid?
Yeah, sure, but I mean, I would say that built into your process, as long as we do it early enough, is the ability to hire experts to review that stuff. That is built in.
But we don't require ourselves to do it,
We don't require,
ourselves to produce.
well, I think
Yeah.
that becomes the decision of the body,
To not do it,
to do it or not do it. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. I think that's what people are
I'm-
saying.
This keeps,
Well-
you guys are talking a lot, timing out on me every time.
Talking.
No, that's great. So staff makes a recommendation. This is a couple of staff pet peeves that we just know we have problems with. We struggle with small accessory structures that really have to meet the regular accessory setbacks, sometimes the full setbacks on the property. These are little things like LP tanks and AC units that we don't call out, and just calling them out in the zoning regs would be helpful to us and property owners, because we deal a lot with tanks and putting them in the, oh, you have to meet the 20-foot setback. Well, what do you mean? So we get that a lot. So there's probably a way to be a little bit more friendly about those placements of accessory structures. The map revisions I talked about previously, we got zoning people always, we get appraisers calling and say, well, can you send me the regulations on the AZ zoning district? I'm like, no. It doesn't exist. For whatever reason, we left them out.
Or we have to look in like the 2000.
Well, they're not valid. That's the thing, is that they're just not valid. So anyway, that's a mapping exercise and something we should really look at. We continue to recommend that at the very least we rewrite our temporary sign regulations. And I know that this group has talked about it in fits and starts. Previous commission, before you talked about it, I have a Mike Glidden, the former planning director, a PowerPoint from like 2020 that talks about we should redo our sign regulations. So I'm not the first to
We
recommend.
never made a final decision. I feel like.
No. I think you had the town attorney went through, and
Yeah.
if you produced the model lawyer ordinance, and it is tough to get through.
How did we not? I
So
mean,
you never
talking
got to the finish line, and
Jeez.
yeah, and we should, because there's nothing we struggle with more than temporary signs in our town.
Okay.
Right. But is that a matter of good advice and experience tells us we should do that, or is that a required step? That was confusing. And part of the reason the thing got bogged down with the former chairman and Mike and the environment and the town attorney, we couldn't seem to get it going. Because it was never clear whether it was actually required, or that
So,
the phrase was that our temporary sign regs were unenforceable.
Okay, so this is what the current planning director would tell you. It's never going to be required. We just have to weigh the risk of constitutional claim versus, the rules that we have. We should fix them, because we really aren't consistent with the latest Supreme Court decisions, because we name them by category, and we say this sign is permitted, but this one isn't, when they're literally the same sign, they're made of the same things. And we've learned that is not something you can do now. We are a town of extreme advocacy, and we have 5K runs and Little League signups, and those things are all signed, and they are all a challenge, because some folks get permits and some people don't. And I think if we had clear rules that we all agreed upon, and even if those rules were, let the Little Leagues put their signs up during registration.
Yeah.
But if you say the Little League can put their sign up during registration, well, you have to be as permissive with everybody else.
Yep.
Anyway, we strongly recommend figuring out how to get there. Yeah, so what can I say? The POCD recommended just taking a second look at our home-based business regulations. We allow home occupation and home-based business, but post-COVID, we should probably look and see, are there changes we need to make? Are there a different review process? Should we make it easier? Should we make it harder? Should we allow for customers? Should we not allow for customers? It's worth looking. It's worth
Has that
looking
come
at.
up for you? Have you guys run into that a lot?
We get questions a lot about, can I do this business here at my house? And then we walk them through, yes, you can, but these are the challenges are you can't have customers, you can't sell, those.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't there a law that passed this session regarding some of that? State level?
Yes, but I haven't read it, and
Okay.
I remember seeing it on on the tickler that says these.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's solved. Well, part of that we would look at whether that helps us at all.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of the daycare one that we did.
No, we did the
We already
daycare
did that,
already.
yeah,
Yeah, we did
you're
the
right.
daycare. All right, and so this last set is really our I mean, I think they continue to be priorities, but I think they are a little different because they're bigger and more global. Rewrite all the sign regulations beyond just the temporary stuff. Review the form-based code for our center zone. We should review it. It was adopted in 2010. I think there are some tweaks that we could make that makes it easier to understand, makes it easier for applicants and property owners. Again, we haven't had that much built in the, if at all. So it's been really hard to check whether that has been a successful code. I know it won an award, haven't built a lot with it. We're waiting for Barber Cove to be built. But should always open up our zoning regulations every period of time to see if there's little fixes we can do. But nothing major. I mean, I think the form-based code should work for our downtown. Form-based code for Hartford South. I mean, I know this is not exactly the perfect time to do it, but I mean, there were a number of, you could decide to take a look at that at some point and say, is this what we want? Is this what we want built? And I would certainly wait till the lawsuit is over to have that conversation. And then, we asked for money for a full zoning ordinance, zoning regulation rewrite this year. We got $75,000 in this budget, and we would come back next year and ask for the balance of that. We desperately need to rewrite the townwide regulations.
When were they last redone?
Well, they have been done over the years. I'm not sure
Because I remember when I first
what the
came
quality
on-
of those changes have been. I
Okay.
don't know that they have solved a lot of problems.
Okay, because I remember when I first came on, they were going through the exercise.
Yeah.
But that was like early.
21 or 20 or
21 was when the revision date of the latest, what that we have.
Okay.
And it kind of moved over from that.
Yeah, but I think, my opinion is, what we really need is a sort of a major resource to come in and look at these things and tell us where we're out of step and make recommendations. I think we could be working on it forever if we feel like we have to be educated on and debate everything and go from zero to something. But
so the answer is of course yes, but there are things we can fix in the interim. I wouldn't
Oh, sure.
recommend waiting for
Yeah.
another 2.5 years to get a consultant. I think there are things we should fix. So
And are those some of the things you called out there?
and those are really on here. I mean,
So can you, sorry, so the full zoning rewrite that you have money to work on.
Yeah.
We obviously want to be able to use that money that you got, like that needs to be used this year, or you
no.
hold on to it?
We're gonna ask for an amount in the next year's budget,
And then you're gonna
so
take
essentially do
both
it in
together?
26. Right.
Oh, okay,
Exactly.
all right.
Most of these, let me say this pretty clearly, that the balance of these items can be handled by your current staff. So the tweak to add the 10, a set aside requirement, the tweak to do this staff can do this. Now, we can't do 42 of them,
Right.
but we can, that's why I'm asking you to prioritize them. That's kind of back to the point. We can do a number of these. We can batch the housing ones together. We can bring you a kind of a slate of several changes that fix things. We can be highly successful to do that.
So, George, is it possible to come up with a time estimate for each of these?
So what
Not in
I-
terms of when it's gonna get done, but how much time you and staff need to invest in actually getting it done.
It is.
In terms of work hours.
So what I would prefer you do is prioritize them first. And then we could kind of put a scope and scale together on the priorities, and I say, well, this one is gonna take 6 to 8 months or a bulk of time. This one, heck, we can go to public hearing next month. So I think if you do the prioritization and we have some consensus on, hey, we should be working on these things, then I can put a schedule together and we can figure out how to get there.
Okay, that makes
And I think it seems that there might be some overlap for some of these.
There is some overlap. I would agree, particularly on the affordable housing stuff with
Right.
mapping stuff. That there is.
Just one other question on rewrite sign regulations. I mean, you mentioned a lot of issues regarding the temporary signs. But there've been a lot of issues regarding the larger sign regulations.
Do you want to answer that? We find it incomprehensible.
Yes.
Okay, so it's,
We have two different sets of regulations depending on where you are in town.
okay,
That have totally different size requirements. So it's very difficult
Okay.
to keep it all straight. For the public, let alone us. I mean, we get it, I mean, we have, it's a job. The residents, if you just looked at our, you would have no idea.
okay.
That's a little bit hyperbole, but it's very hard to understand. There's missing sentences and there's missing pieces, and the numbering and lettering is all off. So it's not easy.
But if you came in and that was all fixed, like, what would you do with your time?
There's always something. Right.
Stop dreaming about that.
So what? Let me just clarify what I really would like you to. Now, again, this is kind of staff in the POCD. You may have some ideas of your own. So it would be terrible of me to shut that off. Maybe you have. Hey, why don't we do this, or why don't we do that, or why? We can put that on the list too. But for the purposes of today, what I would recommend doing today is I would not address this sheet here, which are the big ones. I wouldn't even put dots on this.
Okay.
I think we should do that as part of the full rewrite. And so for the rest of them, go put your dots over on the paper over there.
So we're not counting, we're not.
I mean, it just occurred to me that, I guess if everybody put all their dots on to rewrite the zoning regulations, I would find money this year to go do that. But that's, we're gonna hire a consultant to do that.
Right.
Staff's not gonna do that, so I'm not gonna budget time or energy except for management for that. But even I think to do a full rewrite of the zoning, of the sign regs, we might need a little help on that, so.
But we'll be like chomping off chunks of the stuff that needs to happen between now and 2 years from now in
Yes.
some of these other
And we would
things.
just,
So
we
we
would
would
just
be
roll those
fixing
things
these-
we fixed
Yes.
into the new regs.
Okay.
So it's not like we're not gonna address things on this list if they are not a priority, we're just prioritizing, right? Okay.
Well, let's say that again, because I think my answer to that is yes. If we're not gonna prioritize it, we're gonna take your priorities and go to work. But so the things that aren't prioritized, we're not gonna get to.
But I think what you're saying is, what if it's not on the list at all?
Say that again?
What if it's?
Oh,
Sorry, it's your question. I'll let you answer.
yeah, I'm sorry, Shannon, I'm not sure I heard you right. I wanna make sure I heard you.
Maybe I was, okay, so if we pick 10 things that are our priority and there are still stragglers.
Yes.
Where do those go? I know they are obviously not a priority, but do they like
They get deferred. It's that simple.
deferred into oblivion forever and ever? Or
Well,
like,
we need
so
to
we do the
continue-
dots
couple
again?
years, yeah.
We need to continually
That's my question.
So
set priorities
So,
and
so the
review
output for
priorities.
today
So-
is you're gonna put your
Yeah.
dots, and we're gonna do. I'm gonna do the math for your next meeting, and I'm gonna come back with a
Thank you.
presentation that says this is where you've weighted everything, and I'm essentially gonna try to group them into high priority, mid priority, lower priority, essentially 3 cohorts, and then with each respond to Tony's question by, what's the staff capacity? How much time do we think? What's the real burden? And we'll be able to kind of put man hours to that, and then give you a schedule probably first for the priority ones, and then we can have that give and take. I mean, we may get into having a discussion of the weighting, and you may feel strongly about something that was mid, and then you kind of convince the whole commission to say, hey, it's really more important than,
Okay.
so we're gonna come back, I think, at the next meeting and have a real conversation about how we weighted everything, and what does that mean?
Okay, that was basically.
But the
your-
gist of
your
it
in-
is if we
Your
move
intent
one
is
up,
not that
yeah.
we're picking our top 10, we're using these dots to.
I don't
weight
want you-
things. So you might put 3 dots on one.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, eventually there'll
Yeah.
be 6 really important ones,
Yeah.
6 other important ones, 6 lesser important ones. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Good, just make one comment. I'm a little concerned about this being set in stone. I don't know if that's your intention.
So
It
it's-
may well be that 6 months from now, something may happen in the interim, and then we may need to revisit this.
So your staff works at the will of this commission. We're gonna put a draft schedule and timeline together, and we'll get agreement that, hey, we are gonna start work on this zoning amendment, and you're gonna be like, okay. And we bring you that much. But if there's changing tides, other things we need to work on, of course, we can we're very nimble, and we can turn the ship as quickly as we need to. Do you like that word, nimble?
That was a good word.
It's a good word.
But the concern that I have is that we're in understanding that as things emerge that we didn't anticipate, that we feel have to be taken care
Yeah,
of.
right,
No,
That
that's
means
fine.
something has to be stripped off,
right.
because there's no resource for it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's product management.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
We're nothing if
that's
not
the gist of
flexible.
it. But I mean, I've been doing zoning for a long time, as we all know. I mean, what you don't know is what you don't know. And we always get stuff coming in that
Yeah.
we didn't anticipate, and it throws things off. And, it's how committed are you to the discipline of, trying to make a plan and work the plan? I mean, I'm not trying to lecture, but if we're committed to sticking to it, that will be a step forward.
Agreed.
Oh, absolutely.
And so-
Agreed.
Yeah.
So again, they're over there. I mean, if you think you're not gonna be burdened by your fellow commissioners, you can all go over there at once, but if you don't, if you want a little privacy, I would go over and put your dots on one at a time, whichever way you wanna do it.
Mr. Chairman, lead.
So remember, the
I'd
last one.
say that,
I don't really care.
unless there's some opposition, we should just all go over there and do it
Yeah.
at the same
Yeah.
time.
That's
But
fine.
try to resist the temptation to.
And again, you
Pull
can
other people's
disperse them in
stickers off
any
and stick
way.
them on your
all
thing.
that and move them from one
Anyone
to
want to give
another,
me one of those?
or to converse. Yeah.
Are the alternates able to participate? Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
I initially had 12.
Ooh.
And I'll follow up with Ms. Batos on her selections.
Oh, first 3 here.
I should have brought my own red dots from home and just whip it out of my pocket and just.
I don't know.
He stuck them all in the back of Tucker's, all of ours.
Posterity. Just point at something. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, he's usually good in Simsbury, like up Holly Road.
You said I could if I wanted. If I wanted.
There
Like, we apparently had a uniform
I know, it's exercise, we have the black shirt team here.
Yes.
Yes, and the, oh, no, you didn't wear plaid, I was gonna say the plaid shirt team that you do say.
It really has been,
Cause I thought I was being
I'm just so tired.
emotional.
Yeah, emotionally, it's just, like last night, I had to like leave my house, cause I was like, like I was like, okay. It's just so much. Well, absolutely, yeah, I mean, even like, I was raised as an only child, and, yeah, and, I mean, just the fact that like.
It's okay, that's fine, it's fine.
My mom, I mean, she was such an amazing mom, but like, when we were going through adversity, having like kids,
That's the other
choices, while navigating financial stress and safety, it adds a whole layer of work. Playhouse down the street. The housing.
Yeah, my wife wants to go there, she's a huge fan of
I would
Danish
love to go
furniture.
there.
So she-
Oh, yes, can I go and buy furniture? Sure.
My wife can go to
Yeah.
She loves chairs
Yeah.
and so, oh, yeah,
Ah.
Swedish or Danish furniture.
So wait, Copenhagen, and where else?
Stockholm, yeah, I read a lot of
I
Stockholm.
think
One was a single staircase,
you know, you always say.
Yeah, see, we're at this point now where it's like, we don't know where to go next. I mean, not like we travel all
You've
the
been
time.
everywhere.
But like, my husband's never been to Germany, but I've been a few times, but I would love to happily go back, so I'm like, maybe we'll just go to Switzerland, which is kinda like Germany, you know? But then I wanna go to Italy, and then I wanna go to like the, what is it, the Dolomites?
Yeah.
Which is on the, that, I'd like to go to that.
Yeah, I've been to Turin, if you go further north,
Okay.
around the Alps, like the border of Austria and Italy.
Say again? Oh, thank you for telling us. Good to know. Oops, I just dropped my phone.
Talk about our vacation.
Oh.
You know, yeah, it's so, it brings you needs. Everything that you love, like your in-laws, your own parents,
It's a work session. It's a work session.
yeah. Oh my, I know. Yeah, I yelled at my mom.
I just need to have things like,
She got into the car,
thinking about.
and she didn't drive down my street because then my kid loves her.
Okay, well, that's the one I was curious about. Okay. When you say we, like, who's doing that? Oh. Interesting. And are they going to take, people from the area and like, poll the residents, or is it strictly? Okay, interesting.
Full planning process.
That's interesting. Okay, good.
It's similar to the POCD process,
Sure.
but obviously a little bit smaller.
Sure.
But same idea, the survey,
Good.
stakeholders, public meetings,
Oh, great.
infrastructure review, site walks.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Okay.
We're finishing up the review of the contract, so.
Oh,
kick off in the next
awesome.
60 days.
Okay. I'm assuming the TVA's got to be involved. Yeah, okay. So I'm sure I'll hear of it. Then I'll hear of it, so, okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Well, that's all I have, so I'm going to take, and put a report together and try it, we'll have another city next week.
When's the next meeting?
14 plus.
Yeah, 14 plus
It's a-
17.
It's a holiday, the 17th is a holiday.
It is?
No, the 19th is the
19th is the 17th. Oh, it's a
Somewhere.
Eid. It's Eid? Eid?
Oh,
E-I-D?
So, okay, I thought the 17th was a holiday. Could be wrong.
Juneteenth is Wednesday.
Juneteenth is Wednesday,
Oh,
so.
so it's a Wednesday, okay.
Yeah, so no, I don't think there's
Okay,
I think there's a state or federal holiday.
all right.
So that's all we got.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just, before we move on, I don't know that in our discussion we touched on this, but ultimately, we need to also give some thought to sort of the bang for the buck. You know, in terms of priority setting, in the end, we need to be conscious of, you know, if we're moving on things that are gonna take time and resources, but is the benefit way down the road? Is the benefit only really for a small number of residents? Or is it, you know, a big opportunity for? Okay, enough of that. Now, I did want to mention, although I don't have a lot to say about it, that as everyone knows, we're dealing with the application for 200 Hot Meadow Street, the Silverman thing, where they have initiated an appeal, and there was a little bit of a surprise that they have asked the court to sort of urge consideration of mediation. And I don't know a ton about it, but there was an initial meeting of attorneys, and I was part of that meeting, but I don't want to suggest there's anything to report that we're holding back. There weren't any decisions, but it's underway, and we have no obligation to accept mediation, but we're having an exploration. So there's intention to provide information as it develops for the commission, and it's hard to say when that'll be or what it'll be, but normally this is very early, according to our attorney anyway. It's very early to be talking about mediation, but here we are. And so we don't want to say no, because who knows, there might be a lightning bolt, and there'll be a serious opportunity to come to a mutually agreeable end. But just also, at some point, probably there'll be information appearing in the newspaper down the road, but this could take a long time. But we're represented by a fellow that Ken engaged. George engaged, and his name is Ken. Ken Slater. Ken Slater is a widely known, highly regarded land use and zoning attorney. He's the managing partner of a firm in Hartford, Halloran and Sage. He's been there for 20 years. He's really a widely known, highly regarded guy. So I think we're in good hands, and look forward to, progress, but it's going to be, the turtle pace kind of thing. But
We'll provide a briefing
Yeah.
in executive session as appropriate.
right. Okay. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to bring up under general commission business? Otherwise, we'll move for adjournment. How about a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
And a second? Okay. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. And then the motion passes and we're adjourned. We're adjourned till our next meeting, whatever the date is. It's 2 weeks from tonight.
Thank you, guys.